A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Great crowds accompanied Jesus on his way, and he turned and spoke to them. If any man or woman comes to me without hating their father, mother, wife, husband, children, brothers, sisters, yes, and their own life too, cannot be my disciple. Anyone who does not carry their cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. And indeed, which of you here, intending to build a tower, would not first sit down and work out the cost to see if they had enough to complete it? Otherwise, if you laid the foundation and then found yourself unable to finish the work, the onlookers will all start making fun of you and saying, "Here is someone who started to build and was unable to finish." Or again, what king marching to war against another king would not first sit down and consider whether with 10,000 troops he could stand up to the other who advanced against him with 20,000. If not, then, while the other ruler was still a long way off, he would send envoys to sue for peace. So in the same way, none of you can be my disciple unless you give up all your possessions. This is the gospel of the Lord. A woman once came to Ramana Maharshi and she asked, "The world is full of differences, composed of endless diversity. How can we get over these differences," she asked, "and understand the unity that is the essence of all things?" How would you answer that question? Ramana replied, "The differences are the direct result of our sense of doership, that I am the doer in everything I do." That, in other words, that we initiate, we direct, and we own and we control events. And therefore, we have a right to possess their fruits. It's a radical misperception underlying our dysfunctional egos. Instead of the ego understanding that what it is, which is to say, it is no more than a vehicle, or at best an intermediary, the ego is rather convinced that it is the creator, the doer, and the one responsible also for sorting out the mess that it creates. So we dig a hole, dig a deeper and deeper for ourselves, in our personal lives, relationships, and in our world. Jesus describes these relationships in terms of discipleship, an essential aspect of our identity, one that the modern mind is very uncomfortable with, because the ego is so much part of our cultural conditioning that the idea of discipleship, unless it's something that we control, which of course is ludicrous, but the idea of discipleship offends us because usually we misunderstand it. And when André mentioned that those early Christians living in a slave society could speak about themselves as the slave of Christ. It wasn't a justification of slavery, but it was an understanding of the radical nature of our relationship to reality itself. So he says that those who carry their own particular cross in life and who practice radical detachment, not halfway, but radical letting go, and who live wisely as a result and prudently, those are the conditions for discovering what discipleship means. And to discover what discipleship means is to discover yourself in the light of reality. His examples that he gives in today's teaching, the person who wanted to build a tower has to make sure that they have enough funding to complete it. Well, we lived that as we were doing the renovation here at Bonnevaux. Changeline was the architect in charge of it, and Bertrand was the financial, what should we say, ringmaster for it, coordinator for it. And often we would be on the point of needing to sign a contract with plumbers or electricians to do some other work. And Bertrand would say, no, we can't sign that contract unless we know that we had the money. And I always agreed with him completely. And eventually. But he was absolutely right, of course, and as a result, we were able to finish the renovation without having to borrow a cent. So, a miracle. And the essence, that really taught me a lot about discipleship. And it also taught me that the work, any work that we undertake, is the Lord's work, is the work of the Spirit. And as soon as you begin to think of it as your project, you're in trouble. If the Lord does not build the house, in vain do the builders labor. So the first example is the practicality of making sure you have enough funds to finish the project, the building. And the other example that he gives is the king who is about to start a war and discovers that his enemy has twice as many troops as he has, and defeat is inevitable, and so has the prudence to go for peace, negotiate peace. Well, both of these things, to the minds of the audience, the first audience that Jesus was speaking to here, would have called to mind Herod the Great, the major political figure in Jerusalem in that era, who built the temple and who was a wily politician. So very down to earth, real politics and real finance are linked to this deeper meaning of discipleship. And Jesus links these examples to the identity of the human person at the deepest level, where we are at one with our source, And he links this wise prudence, to the experience of discipleship through the idea of detachment. You've got to be detached from your desire to finish the building at any cost, and to your detachment from the desire to win the battle at any cost. You've got to be detached from it in order to make a wise decision, which is why this Bonnevaux meditation group started out as the Bonnevaux Business Meditation Group, because it was formed for business people under the stress of COVID, who had very difficult decisions to make during that period. And the group, and learning to meditate and being supported in the meditation through this group, helped them to cope, as it, of course it helps people around the world to cope with life. Now, what is this detachment? Jesus says at the beginning of this teaching, you have to hate all those people who are closest to you. Well, this is not to be taken literally. It's another example that Jesus must have had Celtic origins, because he exaggerates. And the other proof that Jesus was Irish is that he always answers one question with another one. What he's saying, of course, is that this relationship that we discover with our source, with God, is the fundamental relationship of our existence, of our life, of our identity. And that has to be, by nature, the primary relationship that we are discovering and nurturing and releasing. So everything relates to it. Everything is nourished by it, by that relationship with our source, with our teacher, with our origin. Now, then at the end he says, at the end of this passage, he says, you cannot be a disciple of mine. Either, another condition is that you renounce all your possessions. But I think what he's saying is, if everybody renounced all their possessions, literally, the world would fall into complete chaos. And it's impossible, because there's always going to be at least one person who's going to pick up everything that is renounced by other people. So I think what he means again by this strong statement, renounce everything, renounce all your possessions, it can't be watered down or diluted. In fact, it's made stronger by the understanding that he's talking about what Romano was talking about, which is the sense of doership. That's what we are renouncing, or we are renouncing the ego, or the dysfunctional ego. Yeah. And without that renunciation, stepping back from that illusion that we build the house, that we fulfill the project, that we are the doer of things, stepping back from that is necessary to be a disciple, to be real. So it's the renunciation of, as a radical letting go of that sense of doership and ownership. Because when you think of yourself as the doer, you inevitably think of yourself as the owner. I am in charge. It's my project. This is my little kingdom in this area here. And whether you're talking about people who are doing the most simple jobs in an organization, or whether people who are thinking of themselves as world leaders. It's the same principle. Possessions, what does that mean then? It doesn't just mean things, it means projects, plans, strategies, and it also means status, all of which add up to greed. And in this part of the gospel, Jesus is examining, teaching the prevalence of greed in the ego's world. So we're not owners clinging to static wealth or power or approval or fame. But what are we then? Well, we're busy people, but we're stewards. We are disciples. We're serving something that is our source directly. Allowing, in other words, the only real doer and the real owner of things to use us, to use these assets that we may temporarily have, and to use you with all your faults and failings, and all that you are, to use you for God's own purpose. Let's put it that way. It's a new vision of reality that Jesus is putting here, and it's so radical and subversive that we don't have to be surprised that it hasn't exactly won the day. It hasn't exactly become our ruling ideology or our ruling philosophy or our ruling wisdom. Nevertheless, we keep repeating it. And in our own individual ways, in every generation, we try to make it real in our own lives. And saying the mantra is a very simple and direct way of putting that into practice and into reality. So it's a new vision of what reality really is, and therefore it's also a new hope for what human existence, human society might be.